Well, thanks for tuning in. You're listening to Sunday Recap, a weekly edition of the Grace Bible Church podcast, where we talk about life and faith based on our sermon this past Sunday. For more podcasts, recordings of sermons, and to submit any questions or comments, visit bgrace.org/podcast. And for more information about Grace Bible Church, visit bgrace.org. I'm Chris Webster, one of the assistant pastors here, and I work on cellos and trellos.
Whoa. My name is Dave McMurray. I'm the teaching pastor at Grace Bible Church.
My name's Jim Wilson. I'm in pastor of Coffee Snobbery at Grace Bible Church.
My name is Kendrick. I'm the audio visual director at Grace Bible Church.
Yeah. All right. Well, we don't have Joey or Elliot here, so I'm going to pretend to be a little bit of a host, but I'm going to rely on you guys to do a lot of good talking. So be ready. Before we dive into the sermon, I just wanted to catch up with you guys on life a little bit. I know there's at least one great story about a life event that happened among us. I'm not going to say who that was, but what have you guys been up to this week? How you're surviving the pandemic? Okay, it's going down.
Doing so well, thriving in the pandemic.
What's one good thing that happened this week? Oh, wait, go ahead, Jim.
Oh, one good thing. I threw away one of my masks. That was a good thing. Every time I throw away a mask, I feel a lot better.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. You retired it? Had it work hard?
Well, it was used sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah. And the other good thing was celebration.
What'd you celebrate, Jim? Tell us.
God's grace. I mean, think about it. 50 years with my wife. We don't even think we're 50 years old yet.
No. That is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's inconceivable to us that it has been 50 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. That's so cool.
So you went to the glorious Texas beaches, and you had the sweet story of what happened on your special dinner night.
Oh, yeah. So we went to a special dinner night. We picked out a place because we tried it out first because we wanted to make sure it was okay. And when we were going in, Diane happened to mention to the people at the front desk that we were celebrating our anniversary. I don't know if they told anybody else, but anyway, there were some people sitting where we couldn't see them that had the same waitress as us. And somehow they got in a conversation about how long do you think they've been married? And the waitress thought less than 30 years. The people at the table thought more than 30 years. And, so they kind of won the bet. But then we finished our meal and we got ready to order dessert. And the waitress said, well, somebody's already paid for your dinner. And we were just flabbergasted. We're like, what? Who would do that? Well, it was the people who won the bet on how long we've been married. And in fact, she came by the table and talked to us and told us, we were the ones discussing, how long you've been married. And we have 8 kids. And I'm like, wow. And but we had no idea that they had paid for dinner, which was cool. It was incredible.
Nice.
We are still astounded.
Yeah. Wow.
I love it.
That's really sweet.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Can you top that, Kendrick?
Says there's no such thing as a free dinner.
Just kidding. What'd you do this week, Kendrick?
Oh, man. Lots of good things. I think. Caden is. He's like not wanting his formula anymore. So he's drinking like regular whole milk and wanting to eat food. I think it's safe to say that he's off of his canned formula, which is a great thing for us.
Yeah, that's a money saver.
Yeah, it's like $40 a can, and he's 1 now, so he drinks a bunch of cans.
Yeah. Whoa. He's getting big, so he's eating steak and potatoes and stuff like that.
Yeah, he loves eggs. He loves carrots and green beans, the fresh ones from HEB. And apparently he likes bell peppers raw. So let him at it.
Yeah.
Oh, kid, he likes vegetables. That's good.
Yeah.
Good Texas boy. All right.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Had some weekend excitement. I was building a little gate there's like a little side yard part of our house, so we've kind of got like a big fence behind it, but I was building like kind of like a little garden gate, and you have to drive these spikes into the ground for the posts, so it's like a kind of a lightweight gate, so you can just like hammer spikes into the ground. Well, for one of the posts, I happened to be hammering it right into where a supply line was going into my house, bringing water in. So water under pressure, you hit that pipe, it starts bubbling up, water starts coming up the post. Like, oh no. Of course, it was 6 p.m. on a Friday, on possibly the hottest day we've had all summer. I think Friday might have been the record. It was close anyway.
Yeah.
And called one friend that has a plumbing company, and he's like, oh man, sorry, we actually sent everybody home early today because it was so hot.
Oh, no.
Oh gosh.
But finally, actually, he was able to find one of his guys off-duty guy, and this guy finished his dinner and then came out and helped me fix it. So that was really cool. So that was a huge, huge blessing, but also a lot of excitement. I was digging a hole and I was going to go ahead and just try to do it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Basically just replacing a piece of pipe. Theoretically, I could have done it. It just would have taken me hours and hours because I'm not very smart with the pipes. But someone came out and rescued me, so that was very nice. We got our water working again. But I think I overdid it. I worked all day in the sun 2 days in a row, so that was probably not good for a man of my age. So.
Man, yeah. Well, crazy. Yeah, we've been kind of half starting school, so we homeschool.
Mm-hmm.
So Brooke's been planning all that. We ordered our stuff early because we know everybody's ordering curriculum now that half the world is homeschooling, and
Yeah.
So that's been what's new with us. So we're kind of easing into it, but that's the thing in Texas too. You talked about it being super hot. We call it the dead of winter in Texas. The dead of summer. It's where you just can't really. You're either hiding in water or you're staying inside.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, let's dive in.
Cabin fever season.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So for those of you not from here, but I think most people are probably here listening. So let's dive into the sermon. So this week we're continuing. Actually, this is the last sermon of Stories of the King. Yeah.
Yeah. Stories of the King last week.
The last week.
Death and Resurrection.
Yeah. So this one was called Surprising Savior, and we're gonna dive into those points. I'm gonna throw a curveball because I'm the host this week. I'm gonna ask Jim what his summary of this. What stuck out to you? I like this. I'm not gonna let Dave set the tone. I'm gonna let Dave see what a random congregant took away from the sermon. What do you think, Jim? What was the sermon about?
A random. Yeah, it's funny because I had to wait till Sunday night because I was driving back from the beach Sunday morning, and so trying to take notes in the dark, that was interesting. But anyway, I was just struck by the whole idea that it's not what you expect. We all have these ideas of this is what salvation looks like, and it's not what you expect. God's plan is just totally different than we would have thought. Our plan would have been a superhero like Superman, right? But God's superhero is so opposite we wouldn't ever conceive of it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. What about you, Kendrick? Did you get to spend dedicated time listening? I know you're always scrambling, doing a million things. Yeah,
that was somewhat of my summary too. I just thought it was. Dave was saying that we think God saves like this, like big, strong superhero king that's gonna come and crush all the empires and rulers of the world. But that's exactly what he did not do. He did something totally opposite. And I think he was saying this is one of the points, but he saves to a mandate really stuck out to me. And I was just like, man, it's crazy that I was thinking, listening back to the sermon, it's crazy that in this pandemic, when it first started, I was like, nothing good can come of this, this pandemic. But I'm like, you know what? Like, this is crazy. This is the way that God saves us. It's not what we think it is. It's, who knows, this pandemic could have been used to save many, to Christ to call many to himself. So it just kind of reminded me the current state that we're in. It's, as weird as it sounds for Christians, it's almost like a very effective time for us and for Christ. Not to say that no other time is effective, but it just really made me think that these are also moments that Christ saves in. Not necessarily when like everything is great in the world, we're able to go to the beach and to go HEB with no. Well, Jim just went to the beach, but to HEB with no mask and everything. Well, we think the world is normal, and just supreme opportune times, right? And I think we try to rely on that a lot. Like, this is an optimal moment, even with like spreading the gospel, or this is an optimal moment for us to do it. But I'm like, after the sermon, I'm like, man, the optimal moment is just whenever God decides. Like, he saves who he chooses to save when he chooses to save them. So just the summary of the message to me was just that, like, oh man, it's, even with knowing that, hearing it again, that we have a surprising Savior that saves in the face of a pandemic, when things are crazy in the world, when they're not our normal. That God is still good. He's still saving.
Yeah.
Love it. That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, Dave, I'll let you go now. So can you just quickly summarize what's the story that you were touching on, and then just kind of what's the main point for us?
Yeah. So this was the Matthew account of Jesus' death and resurrection, which is basically 2 chapters. So I was kind of skimming through it and kind of picking out some of the highlights of Matthew 27, 28. But I mean, Jim and Kindergarten hit on it. The title is a lot of it. Surprising Savior. It's not the way we expected. And I was trying to contrast. We look for salvation in success, normalcy, and independence, but Jesus saves us, through tragedy, anomaly, and towards dependence. I use the word mandate with the Great Commission. Like, we're brought into a team. We're not just set free to like go be lone rangers and do whatever we want, which is more the American ideal. So yeah, I was just struck by that. Yeah, a lot of some of the same similar insights that Jim and Kindergarten mentioned. But yeah, my key words for the surprise, there was the surprise of tragedy, anomaly, and mandate. Anomaly. It's a fun word.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's funny, when you played the Lecrae song at the end of the service, I was like, wait, that's not what I remember. Did he have another song with the word anomaly in it? Am I crazy?
He had an entire album called Anomaly, but that song, Anomaly, was on
song.
Anomaly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think maybe I didn't like that song, but I like that album because I remember the album. Like, I can remember the album strongly, but the song just seemed not as familiar to me.
Yeah.
I must have listened to other songs more. What were some of the main songs off that album? Do you remember?
That one, there's a song, All I Need Is You. I Think I Trust You is on there.
Okay.
I think that was a popular one. That may be the one you heard, where he's he's talking about he was never accepted. Well, kind of an anomaly too. He was supposed to be this great football player, this American dream, all of that, but he chose he ended up going, because Christ called him, this route that everyone was like, why are you doing that? Like, you're tall, you're supposed to play basketball. Why are you like devoting your life to like Christian music and discipleship and all of that? So I think he was saying he was going against his culture and that he was in. That may be the song you like. It was really good and really probably would tie in well with the sermon too.
Nice.
This episode brought to you by Lecrae. All right, everybody go listen to all those songs. Yeah. Well, let's dive into. I was gonna say first you had your illustration about Superman, right? Saving Lois Lane and the famous line, "You've got me, but who's got you?" I think that was that's an interesting one. It's kind of hard for us to wrap our mind around a God who is not shaken and no one else has to hold him, right? Yeah. So. That was just, that one stuck out to me. So point number 1, let's dive in. He saves through tragedy. What's the idea here, or what's happening in the story? I guess.
I mean, he's just getting the junk beat out of him, right? I mean, he's just torn to shreds. He's beat up. He's killed. He's murdered. He's mocked. He's spit on. They put signs up to make fun of him, and in all of that, that's actually how he saves us. So it's like the losing the battle is how he wins the battle, and that's just so confusing and crazy. I just think it's just one of those things. As Christians, we have to discipline ourselves to attend to the weirdness of it all, or we'll miss it, because we've grown up in a culture where we've heard the story again and again. We're like, of course, this is the story. I've heard it before. We just have to kind of meditate on the tragedy and the oddness of it all.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that this morning the reading on our Bible reading plan was Isaiah 52 to 55. And so Isaiah 53 is all about God's servant, our Savior, who did all these things, and what he was really going to be like. And his appearance wasn't anything beautiful. It was, people looked upon him with scorn.
Yeah,
but it talks all about the tragedy that he went through so that we could be saved.
It's a good cross-reference.
And that is interesting. I find myself, so I mainly got to listen during the evening service, and just there's some new folks there, and so every once in a while I'll find myself sort of listening with their ears and not really knowing, not really knowing where they're coming from or if they've heard this before. And that is kind of an interesting strangeness of Christians, right? Is that we are celebrating something horrible. And Dave, you were going into the details of the pain and what crucifixion was like, and it is just this strange juxtaposition of we have to know the depths of the tragedy, how tragic it was, in order to feel how beautiful it was at the same time, right? But that can almost be strange and off-putting if you're not sure, if you can't tell what's going on, right? As a new believer, did y'all ever have a moment like that where looking from the outside into the Christianity, and you're like, what in the world are these Christians doing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed. I can recall asking someone who was giving me the gospel early on, and he was telling me that because my Jesus appearance for me was such a big deal at the time. And he was telling me that it'd be easy for us to follow a king that was so beautiful, that everyone loved, that said all the right things. And one of the things that he said to me was, our human hearts are kind of like knitted together by tragedy. It seems like the human heart is so able to kind of like reach out and to receive others during tragedy. And I just thought that was such a weird thing. And one of the things that he was telling me was he thinks that Christ and all of his wisdom and all of the things that we don't understand just understands, and that tragedy, that the death on the cross is something that when celebrated sounds weird, but somehow it connects us together. And I was like, man, that still doesn't make sense. I don't understand why you're celebrating death and tragedy. And he was like, I don't either, but it's the only death that we deem as beautiful. And that stuck out to me more than anything. It's the only death that we deem as beautiful.
Yeah.
Makes me
I think acknowledging the unusualness is a very important part of that.
Yeah, that's good. It makes me think, you didn't use the word this time, Dave, but the C.S. Lewis eucatastrophe, the good catastrophe.
Tolkien.
Oh yeah. They're the same person in my head, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. The good tragedy. Yeah, it's fascinating. And I'm fascinated then applicationally by how that gives us a way through tragedy, like that helps us function in a world of tragedy. I think Christians sometimes can't remember how much I said. I think I said this in both services. We skim over hard things, like we want to edit hard things and use our hope as a way of not dealing with the hard things. Like, I have hope for the future, therefore I don't have to think about this, or God's in control, everything's cool, kind of pretending everything's fine. And I think it's important that we like look at the tragedy head on, like, this is bad, this is painful, this hurts. And so I think having tragedy at the center of our salvation and seeing a Jesus who went through this horrible tragedy and actually used it to save us and still grieved it, that just the whole matrix is really good. Like, oh, Jesus grieved, and yet it was the best tragedy ever, like the most fruitful, useful, beautiful, to use Kendrick's word, tragedy ever. Jesus still grieved it, like he still was crying and hurting and, God, why, where are you? I think that's really helpful to us as humans. Like, oh, okay, so I can do that too. I can pray the Psalms as well. I can also say, how long, O Lord?
Yeah, I think that was really something helpful that you touched on about acknowledging something happened and going through the process of saying, okay, this is what happened and this is what it cost me. This is what it did to me. And God knows, but our acknowledgement, our confession of it, and acknowledging that he's there to do something about it really helps us mentally, helps our heart, helps us trust in him more, because and it's a healing thing. It helps us to start healing.
Yeah. I think that's really good. I've been talking a lot. I'm in a discussion group over racial issues with some other believers from the church. And one of the things we've wrestled with is corporate grief or corporate lament. And so what I find is the typical conservative says there's nothing good that comes out of talking about bad things, right? That's kind of like a knee-jerk conservative reaction. And then the typical liberal is like overly obsessed with it. There's kind of a victim identity thing. And I think as Christians, we've got to navigate the middle. Like, we've got to be all about personal responsibility, hopefulness, and moving forward, positive thinking, doing the right thing, doing the next right thing, and doing the best we can with what we've got. But we also have to look at the past and say, that hurt, that was bad, that was, not a good idea. We have to be willing to look at those things, grieve them, so that we can move on in a healthy way. And so it's just interesting in our divided country right now, it's all or nothing. It's like either you grieve or you don't grieve. You know what I mean? It's like either you grieve in this weird, unhealthy, I'm a victim and I can't move on way, or you don't grieve at all. It's like those are the only two options presented by the world. And as Christians, we're like, no, we can grieve, look at our past, our family, our nation, our city, our church, whatever, and say, man, that was messed up. Let's move on from there. God forgive us, God heal us, God help us. Let's move forward. And that middle way, I think, is getting harder and harder to navigate in our culture.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that you say that. Like a perspective that I've had for a while was growing up in like a Kojic background. It's like those are negative words. So when you come to God, right, use words, and those feelings aren't in the Bible. Expressing how things make you feel, how those aren't words. So when you come to God, if you use those words, you're not using words. And I think one of the things that I deem helpful and why I like Hebrews 4 so much is because of how relatable I think Jesus is to us. And like you were saying, he is this king that should receive reverence and honor and glory. But at the same time, we can come to him and we can tell him what's hurting us, what's bothering us. So I think it's so cool that as God, as sovereign as he is, as powerful as he is, here we have Jesus in the flesh that's understanding what it's like to live in this body.
Amen.
And it takes a God that's bigger than tragedy, right? To actually hold on to that kind of a worldview. That's huge. You touched on that a lot last week, Dave. I think, and it's so important, right? I think that it's hard to imagine that tragedy is not the end of a story, because even like we see death is the period, is what we are always told, right? That's, you're done. That's full stop. If the hero dies, end of story, right? And so that's what's so beautiful about this story. Yeah, good stuff. Anything else about point one? We ready to keep going? We have I know we have the application. So what are some of the specific things you do with that? I think one question I had was, how do you balance the saying something was wrong but not just completely giving yourself over to that, like facing I think that's what we have such a hard time with, is either extreme. Either we're going to ignore all wrong things so we can stay happy, or we're just going to go 100% into, like you said, depressing music and being a depressed teenager and everything's ruined. What are some of the strategies you guys have for that?
Well, I think. Go ahead.
Well, I think one of the things that I've been taught through some counseling is that God is in the process of redeeming things. And he redeems things that are tragic in our lives. And so we need to be on the lookout for, how did God change us through a tragic situation? How did he do something that made us different, that helped us grow in maturity in Christ? And you may not find that immediately, but I think asking God to help you see those things is a great start, because we are sometimes unaware of God's redemption going on in our lives because we haven't asked him to show us, and we haven't really thought about it. I thought about how we perhaps were changed in a way that actually benefits other people by those tragic things.
Yeah, that's good. I think just going through the motions of praying the Psalms and journaling the Psalms is a activity as well. So Jim's talking about a very specific to me. God, show me, what you've done in my life. But then, as far as like a practice, the ongoing, just reading and praying the Psalms, that movement. It's like dribbling, shooting, pass. You're practicing the basics in the sport. There were things we did over and over again when I played football, or other sports, where they just want your body to just be in this habit. Like, this is normal. This is what we do. And so the Psalms can build that habit of tragedy, God's sovereignty, yet I will praise you and wait on you. Going through that cycle over and over again with slight variations, you get the benefit of that if you pray the Psalms and translate the Psalms and sing good, Christian music that's based on the Psalms and stuff.
And Kendrick was alluding to this earlier, so let's talk about the current tragedy of the pandemic. Have y'all been starting to feel a sense of what is God doing here? So what are some things that he's doing to us and in us in this time? Any inklings of that stuff?
Yeah, Lamentations 3 says, "You have walled me in." That's sometimes how I feel during the pandemic. Like, there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do.
Yeah.
I feel so boxed in. I feel so walled in. But then you finish the rest of the chapter, and he was like, "Oh, I turned to God in my weeping, and he heard me, and he delivered me from all of my fears." And I thought that was such a good way of him. Like you were saying earlier, there's the tragedy, then there's God's sovereignty, and then this is what brings us to God. And so I think what I've kind of come to in this whole pandemic is like, this is turning me to God. Crazy as it sounds, but this whole pandemic is like turning me more and more towards Christ.
Yeah, I think there's been some good teamwork that's come out of it. Church-wise, the leaders connecting more regularly, because we can't be in the same place and take each other for granted. So we have to talk to each other on purpose, So that's been good. There's still the negatives of separation, but talking to each other on purpose, I think, is happening more. I see more broadly the family, like, it's overwhelming, so it's a stress on marriages and parents to feel isolated with their kids and spouses. But it's also okay, let's go back to basics. This is a time, it can be a renaissance of family-based discipleship. So I think some families are cratering, which may be what it takes to get them, kind of to Kendrick's point, to get them to call out to the Lord and seek his help as a family. But other families are just like learning new systems, like, okay, we're a family, we're going to do this thing together, or husbands and wives, we're together more, we're going to figure this out, I think that could be a really good and beautiful thing that comes out of this.
Yeah.
Families learning to be families, like families first, like we're a household first, and then secondary to that, we've got a workplace and a school and then these other places we connect with.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I think the analogy that, as y'all are talking, I was thinking of is the refining analogy, right? Of you take something that's, as you're going through this fire, you could either just get completely burned up or come out purified and stronger and more beautiful. But it some of it is just like, yeah, what are you trusting? Who you're trusting in? I think about that too. How much this could be a time of really asking the question of our own personal spiritual lives. We can't outsource that to the professional spiritual people at church right now. We have to say what's going on at home, and what's going on in my mornings and evenings, and again, you could either some people are going to just burn up because there's nothing of substance there, but for Lord willing, for so many people in the church, there's this moment of saying, oh gosh, this is a time to learn and grow and press in. So yeah, that's awesome. Well, let's go on to the next point. So point number 2, he saves by anomaly. Can you talk us through just a bit of what the idea is there, Dave?
Man, I guess big picture, 50,000 feet, it's a supernatural worldview, right? It's an invasion from the outside. It's not the normal way of things proceeding, and so I talked about a couple of major weirdnesses in that text, and then went into the resurrection itself. So the resurrection is the biggest thing that's weird that happens, right? Jesus rises from the dead. That's like the big unusual anomaly of this whole thing. But leading up to that, story-wise, there was like the temple curtain was torn in two. There was an earthquake. There were spirits that, like, people came out of their graves and walked around, like just all kinds of craziness was taking place. And all of this craziness, to me, drives us to run to God, to run to him in grace. The Hebrews 4, let's with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, Hebrews 4:16, or 1 Corinthians 15. It's like, if God has really taken away death and everything, then we're going to give ourselves fully to the Lord. We're going to stand firm. We're going to keep going. We're going to know our labor is not in vain. So there should be this confidence that comes from the out of nowhere crazy, man, God saved us. He tore down the curtain, the barrier between us and God. He tore down the veil between death and life by rising from the dead. He's changed things.
That's good. The first question that comes to mind for me, is talking real life. So, we talk a lot about the modern American understanding of the world is there are no anomalies. It's all scientifically, we can explain it. So what do you say to people who say, I've never experienced anomaly in my life, so is Christianity real? Or how does that interact, right? We see these amazing, out of the ordinary stories, but even for a lot of Christians, we say, but everything's seemed pretty normal in my life. What does this conversation look like for that?
Well, I think it's really important to remember that a first century person would have said the exact same thing. So they might have been open to the possibility of supernatural, right? They believed in spirits and supernatural, but they did not believe in people rising from the dead. So like we conflate as modern scientific people who are, I'm trying to think of a not overly negative way of saying this. We're so smart we don't think supernatural things are possible, which is really interesting that that's where we live at this time in history. It's kind of silly, really. But anyway, we conflate that with, oh, well, if first century people thought that supernatural things were possible, then they thought it happened everywhere all the time, and they were gullible, dumb people. You know what I mean? Like, we jump to believing the supernatural means gullible and dumb. And they were way smarter than we were. You know, like, the average first century person knew how to do things in real life that we don't know how to do. You know, all we know how to do is brush our teeth and use our iPhone. And they, like, knew how to grow things out of the ground and, you know, knew how to deal with dead bodies when that happened. We don't know how to do that. We just call in the expert, you know. So they were familiar with death. They killed animals. They dealt with dead bodies in their family. They, you know, they knew death. Death was real. It was scary. It was around the corner. People didn't live as long. And they were not gullible. I just think that's a really important thing for us to understand. So that's the kind of conversation I have with my really scientific worldview friends, is like, I'm not against science. I'm not against the empirical worldview, but that's built on, this is how things normally work. It's not, it doesn't mean things can't work differently than how they normally work. It just means this is how things normally work. That's really all it means. And we've taken it to mean things can't do anything different than what I've seen. Sorry, it's a pet peeve of mine. But yeah, I think just trying to be humble. I think that's the thing I would love to teach people, to be humble. I think there's a great lack of humility in modern life.
Yeah, I love you said, and I'm reading straight from your notes here, but you said true weirdness is when hearts are changed, doubters become believers. That's one of the beautiful miracles we do get to see, but we can sometimes write off as just sort of good counseling or something like that. I was going to ask y'all, can y'all talk just a little bit? Can you think of a person or maybe your own life of where you just see this they meet Jesus and and that's a different person all of a sudden? Like, do y'all have examples of that you've encountered in your life and can just talk about a bit?
Not off the top of my head, no. but it is interesting that, you know, we tend to, I think Dave's pet peeve is actually quite true of us. We tend to think that we made the logical decision, right? We weighed the facts and we weighed the evidence, and therefore we came to this conclusion. When really, at some point, we have an awakening and go, wait, I didn't figure it out. God figured it out for me. Right? Yeah. So,
he opened my eyes.
Yeah.
I can recall being in the 7th grade, and I went to visit my great granddad, and I told him what I was learning in biology, and I was telling him what the human heart is made out of tissue, and I was like telling him that all the things I was learning, I was like, this isn't in the Bible, like thinking I would trip him up. So he said, okay, go in the restroom and get me a roll of tissue. So I was like, not understanding him. Go in the restroom, get him a roll of tissue. He said, now the tissue is different, but your heart is made out of tissue. Do you agree? I said, yeah. He was like, well, I want you to do me one favor. I want you to give life to this piece of tissue. You can't. And he was like, your heart, it's tissue. There's no on switch. There's nothing that you plug up to that palpitates it. That's a God, grandson. And he was like, here's the difference between you and I. When I was wrestling with Christ, I didn't have the internet to go to tell me inaccuracies or things that I wanted to look up. He said I had to trust God. I had to read the scriptures. I had to pray. And so I think, and then he said, my heart was transformed, of course, but it opened my eyes. I was like, you know, what's a greater miracle is people coming to Christ, receiving the call that he gives them without Google, without a million books, without these things. Like, that's a great miracle. You know, without all of this technology, um, uh, and all of these new world like apologists and all of these things, that people still believed in Christ just as much as we somehow believe in him now. And me, I'm like very information based. I need the facts. I need Google. I need the internet. I need to look up a million things first before I believe it. And I'm like, that is a pure transformation of hearts that Christ did in my grandfather's life. That's a great miracle.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then that's the beauty with the centurion. He's like, all right, I've seen it. I believe. And
Yeah.
that was a hardened dude. That was a skeptic. You know, I mean, he'd seen a lot of crazy stuff, I'm sure, been through a lot of battles. And yeah, I just think we should not underestimate the miracle of faith.
Mhm.
And we should also not make it anti-rational. You know what I mean? Like, so, and I know that's
Mm.
not in any of y'all's heart. It is reasonable and it's a miracle. You know? It's
Yeah,
both.
yeah. It's both.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the other thought that occurs to me is these anomalies, or the anomaly allows us to go through normalcy in a mindful sort of way, right? I think of so like the Israelites getting out of slavery in Egypt, and these plagues happen, and there's a pillar of cloud and fire, and they get across the Red Sea, but then they're in the desert forever, and so. You know how long? I mean, they were in the desert a long time, but like us, they can look back and say these amazing things have happened. So even when it just feels like this is all there is, we can do like they did and say, no, look at what God did. And so it's not like you said, Dave. It can't just be anomalies all the time. You know, we're just but we can look back to especially the anomaly of the resurrection, and that is the thing that allows us to be faithful. When it does feel like maybe this is all there is, you know, that whisper in the back of our heads. So we come back to this beautiful anomaly.
Yeah. I think too, I don't want to twist this up too much, but I think we're kind of dancing around this. There's like this ultimate anomaly of the resurrection that is not how the world works, that gives us hope of something beyond the entropy and decay that we work with on a daily basis, right? So the resurrection says there is hope, there's a future, which to y'all's point, you know, as Grandpa Kendrick's grandpa said, that gives life to our daily scientific bodies. It also gives us mindfulness to appreciate God in the little things day by day, and just that the scientific world exists should stir faith in our hearts, right? Like that there is a world of meaning and laws and physics is amazing. Like there's not, so rationally it should be chaos. Rationally, the world should be total chaos. And I think a true nihilist philosophically would say it is chaos, and we're just lying to ourselves and saying that there's order and science and, you know, natural law. But most scientists are like, no, there are rules. Like, this is how physics works. This is how the world is, you know, like, so anyway, trying to loop it back around, like miracles, there's a miracle that God made a world that works consistently according to the laws of science. You know, like, that's a miracle. That's an amazing pushing back against the way the universe normally decays, you know? So, anyway, I don't know. That's like, to me, it is all connected.
Yeah.
I just had this strange thought too of, like, to Kendrick's grandpa's point of that death is such a spiritual thing. Like, it's such there is a spiritual world out there. Like, so not only is we can't make just, you know, random biological pieces come alive. We know that there's this moment when we, in a sense, in the physical way, stop being us, and we don't know why that is, right? And so this idea of death is such a strong. There's more happening than we can see. We know that, right? Like, because physically, what has happened from a living person to when you die there's just that very clear spiritual picture of something happened that we can't really explain what this journey is. And so, like you said, Dave, we can sometimes just think, oh yeah, death's a part of life. That's just the way it's always been. Or we could say, what's actually happening there? And we need to, I need to have a hope that can't be stopped by whatever that is. What Jesus is pointing to. So application here, what's the application? What's the takeaway? What do we do with this knowledge?
Well, 1 Corinthians, Paul says, the application of the resurrection is stand firm, give yourself to the work of the Lord, your labor's not in vain. So it's like, don't give up. It's perseverance, right? Don't give up. Keep working. Plant, I would say, to take it, to tie all these words together, plant dead seeds and expect miraculous growth to come out of dead seeds, right? So God's given us a gift of this in the natural world. He says, bury these little dead nuts in the ground, and miraculously things will sprout from them, right? That's just crazy. Like, that's how he made the world. He says, we'll have dirt and poop in the ground, and then you'll throw dead things in it, and life will come out of that. That's just how we're going to make the world, okay? And so when we look at the resurrection, that should fill us with that same kind of hope and perseverance to be spiritual farmers, to pour into people, giving people the gift of time, kindness, love, service, ultimately the words of the gospel itself, and expect spiritual fruit to come out of that.
That's good. I think that moves us great into point 3. He saves us into a mandate. So so that's part of the application. What's point 3, Dave? Can you summarize?
Man, point 3 is the Great Commission. Jesus meets with his dudes on the mountain right before he flies away, and some worshipped, some doubted. I love that. That's not the main point, though. He gives them a command. He's like, go make more followers. Y'all are my followers. Go make more followers, right? Let's make disciples. It's a confusing verb to us because he's asking us to do something supernatural. So he clarifies that he'll be with us, right? So I'm asking you to do something supernatural. So with all the nations and people groups of the world, go make disciples. He says, by the way, I'm going to be with you. And by the way, I've got all authority in heaven and on earth. So he's going to help us. And then he even gives us details, some steps like, well, here's part of how you're going to make disciples. You're going to go. You're going to go places. Go and make disciples. You're going to baptize people in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And then you're going to teach people to obey me. So in our church, we have the mission statement is introduce people to Jesus, establish them in a walk with Jesus, and equip them to do the work of the ministry. That's kind of the way we break those steps down into steps as a church. But yeah, go multiply followers, go make more disciples of Jesus. That's what we're called. We're all called to that, whether you're a church leader or just a brand new believer. Everybody in the church is called to that.
And there's this true sense of togetherness, right? Like, it's not just mission, it's co-mission, the Great Commission, right? Together. It's not just you, singular, it's kind of a y'all thing, as us Texans like to say, or so we're
you
gotta do it together. I think I just say that because I see this continuing trend, and I'm sure there's always been somewhat of a temptation of like, I'm gonna do my mission, I just don't want to have to bother with all the churchy people and do it with do it together. Like y'all haven't figured it out, so but especially these younger generations are like, well, let's just be done with the church and we'll go to do the mission over here by myself. So together we're a people.
Yeah, it's really good. It's a plural imperative. It's not a singular imperative. It is a plural. Y'all make disciples.
Okay.
The new Texas translation.
Yes.
Good deal. Well, this may have been. I have it as probably your shortest point, but not not to make that old joke, but yeah. What else? I mean, is there more to unpack? Is that just remembering that you have a purpose here, or we have a purpose here?
Yeah, the thing that keeps circling around in my mind is it's not manipulation that makes disciples, it's the invitation to these things.
Mm.
And I feel like lots of times we feel like we have to try and manipulate people into believing somehow,
Mm.
when that's not our work. Our work is to just invite them to believe, and God's work, through the Holy Spirit, is the one who, He's the one who awakens their heart to His goodness and mercy, and
Mm-hmm.
it removes a lot of we feel this huge burden. Like we have to get to the end point. We have to get you to the point where you say, I believe. And that's really not what He's calling us to. He's calling us to just, hey, you're part of the team. Tell them the story. Tell them your story. And feel free to walk away and go, hey, if you have questions, I'll be around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there can be an idolatry of strategy where we think, it's about our amazing farming and that's what's going to make the seeds grow. And we forget the simplicity, like Dave was saying. We're doing this strange thing of putting dead seeds in the ground and God makes them grow. But especially right now, I think as we're having lots of conversations of what's church going to look like, what are people supposed to do in this time, there can be an idolatry of strategy of we've got to make this happen, or if it's not working, it's because we're not doing it right. And there's just a beautiful simplicity of let's be faithful. But I think also one thing, I've been reading this great book, Look and Live by Matt Papa, and just this kind of he makes this statement that I just wanted to pass along too, of if you're just doubting and wondering and you're not sure if you're on the team, have you really looked at Jesus, right? Are you looking at Jesus? Maybe you've drifted away. You began as a believer when you saw the glory of what He's done, of this tragedy, this anomaly, this thing that called you into a mission. But have you stopped looking? Have you really continued to gaze and see the beauty? And are you actively pursuing that? I think that's just such an encouragement to me. It's like, well, if you're starting to wonder about it, are you spending time with Him? Are you really looking for the beauty that's there? And there's this beauty of what, like Dave says, I just think you said a lot of things during this sermon that I just loved, where it was just like, just pray for God to do, to bring people for you to talk to. Just do it and He'll bring them. And it's kind of like this strange cockiness. Oh, will He? Oh, He will. Okay, let's do that. All right. I don't know. It's just funny. Maybe being in the church so much, it doesn't feel like the math is that simple. but yeah, God really does things. Yeah.
I think having a garden is a really helpful thing for this, because I planted a whole bunch of seeds and they don't come up, right? And I can't explain it. Why the rest of them came up? Why does that come up?
Yeah.
And it just
or
helps
they come
you.
up later, right? Have you ever had that happen where like your garden is done and then you're like, wait, where'd that come from? Something else springs up a few months later and you're like, what's going on?
Yeah, it's just so helpful in seeing how Jesus used those stories all the time about the farmer who plants seeds, right? And we have this expectation that every seed is going to produce something, and it doesn't. And then there's these seeds that we don't even know got planted, and they do produce stuff. So I think we have to put that into spiritual terms in dealing with people's lives and our testimony to them. We should rejoice at what happens. And there's grieving when seeds don't produce, but we're going to keep on planting seeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to Chris's point was interesting. The quote from the book was, I can remember when I was younger, as I'm still younger, I was so bashful at a point in time of Christians and churches that I didn't think did discipleship or did it well. And I have an individual that was sort of discipling me then. He was like, man, your Christianity is not in your work in discipleship. It's in the work of Christ's death. And I was like, oh, man, maybe I have made, like out of this discipleship thing. And that's crazy because he was connecting that to the parable of the sower. Like we don't, it may even sprout, but we don't even know how it'll sprout. Like, the seeds, we think we're planting them here. Some of them fell here, some of them fell there. But our thing is just to put the seeds in the ground and watch God do that miraculous work to bring it back what you were saying. So that was so interesting when Jim was saying how he's planted these seeds, and some of them came up, but no explanation on the rest. And it's like, man, there has to be the work of Christ in that, only because when we plant these seeds in the ground and we do this practical application, and we can get upset that people don't receive Christ. But I think what he was saying, just walk away, just trust God, just pray about it. He'll do the rest. These are the things in our life that I think we see great miracles in as well.
That's good. That's a good word, man. I've been convicted that much of the modern world, I think I actually got this idea from podcasts. So it was like some theology professor was talking about it. I think she might have even done research on this specifically, but how much of our how to lead, how to manage, that we get from the business world and we import into the church to try to, I think it's good that we would try to lead well. That's a good thing to aspire to. I've tried to grow in that area, but so much of it is built on mechanical illustrations when there are very little mechanical illustrations in the New Testament. I think you've basically got the building, right? The kind of like bricks and stones and foundations. That's really the only mechanical illustration. I think the rest of it is our body being knit together, like one body, many parts. There's a lot of that for how the church operates. And then there's a lot of the sowing seeds and watering, planting, watering, growing, good soil, bad soil. God makes it grow. We're not totally in control of it, kind of stuff. And so that's been really interesting. I'm more and more thinking leadership is more about doing than perfecting. But my heart, drifts toward perfecting and strategizing, doing it the best, And I think, there's some of that, refine and be strategic. We see Paul be strategic, but so much of it's just getting out there and doing, just loving people, sowing seeds, getting up, doing it all over again. So.
And really the foundation of doing has to be being, right? Even before, I think that's the temptation I notice over and over again, is skipping over the being with the Father, going to working for him right away, right? Got to get out in that field.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seeds ain't gonna sow themselves. Yeah. Cool. Well, any last thoughts? I think we've been going a good while, so we probably should wrap it up. That's beautiful. Any encouragement for just Joe and Jane worshiper out there wondering what to do in the pandemic? What do we do with this right now?
I'd say go back to basics. If you have a quiet time, are you spending time in the Word and in prayer? I feel like the pandemic, I've had to be forced over and over again to rethink my prayer life. I've been doing better at spending time in the Word, but man, I have to keep coming back to like, okay, I've got this new prayer initiative. All right, it petered out again. Okay, I got to pray again, and it should be the easiest part, right? Because we're powerless. We're so powerless right now. But yeah, I would really encourage that, going just back to basics. Are we praying? Are we reading the Word? Are we spending time alone with God?
Yeah, I think I would say the same, as well as be patient. I know you mentioned that we're getting into Daniel in 2 weeks, and Daniel has a great story of just dragging out these long prayers and waiting on God. It's so good, but be patient and just walk with God in the basics. I think that would be my encouragement. We're so ready for things to go back or go forward or go this way or go that way. I'm just like, man, there's beauty in just quiet time with God, praying and just waiting, just being patient.
And I thought the last words Jesus gave to his disciples in that Great Commission, "I will be with you."
Mm,
You know, just keeping that in front of me. I'm with you.
yeah.
Love it.
Yep.
So good. Well, thanks for tuning in. You've been listening to Sunday Recap, a weekly edition of the Grace Bible Church podcast, where we talk about life and faith based on our sermon this past Sunday. For more podcasts, recordings of sermons, and to submit any questions or comments, visit bgrace.org/podcast. For more information about us, Grace Bible Church, visit bgrace.org. We hope you guys have a great week, and we will see you next time. Adios.
Peace.
Job.